you reckon about the design? I think the front end is very chunky, but it does have these blank sections here, which, I don't know, it just looks like it's not quite finished yet. But I do get it. It's futuristic, it's modern, but it also is very rugged and has that off-road appeal. This is the new Lexus GX. It's been offered overseas for a few years now, or a few generations now actually. It's based on the Toyota Prado, so it has the rugged, heavy-duty underpinnings, but it has that layer of luxury over the top with the Lexus brand. That means this is based on the latest generation 250 series Prado, underpinned by the TNGA F platform, like the 300 series Land Cruiser, and probably like the upcoming next generation Hilux. It still has a ladder frame chassis though, independent front suspension with a live axle rear end. In Australia, you can only get the GX 550 for now at least. It features a petrol engine, 3.4 litre twin turbo V6. We've seen this engine in other Lexus models. It's sort of detuned in this application to 260 kilowatts and 650 Newton meters. Plenty of torque there, but 260 kilowatts is, yeah, a bump down from around 310 or 305 in other Lexus models with the same engine. I don't mind that though. I wish the new Toyota Prado was offered with a detuned version of the 300 series diesel V6, because I'm going to be reviewing that soon, but that comes with a 2.8 litre pretty much carryover engine, but it does have the mild hybrid technology. Doesn't change the power or torque levels. For a big vehicle like this, I think you need a bit more power and torque, but this is not a Prado review. Let's stick with the GX for now. As you can probably see, I've been off-road already with this. I just did some light off-roading. I was out exploring and trying to find some new tracks. It seemed to go quite good. I think the main limitation is these the wheels, the 20-inch wheels, 265/55 tires. They're just not, you know, extremely tall profile, so you've got to be careful with rocks and all that sort of thing, and they don't provide much flex. But they are all-terrain rated tires, so you do have some pretty aggressive tread there. The approach and departure angles are quite good, 26 and 23 degrees respectively, but the ground clearance, according to Redbook, is 215 millimeters, which is not that much. But sometimes Redbook gets it wrong. I'll try and find the official specs from Lexus and flash up the if it's a different figure now. It seems like it has more than that though. During the light off-roading that I did, had no problem getting over humps and bumps and so on. The breakover angle is also pretty good for a big long vehicle like this anyway. And then lastly, just on the exterior, the design, I actually really like it. I like having a sort of low window sill, a bit like the early Land Rover Defenders and Discoveries, how it's quite low, that way you get a good view outside. We'll jump inside in a second, I'll show you what I mean. But yeah, I like the sort of square and bulky look about it. Just the front end, probably could be revised a little bit, get rid of these big blank spots. You could probably put some, driving lights or something there if you wanted to. But yeah, I think overall it looks quite modern and, it has to stand out a little bit, but I do like the way that it's square. Like, look at the roof. It's almost completely square with almost completely vertical A, B, and C pillars. And then inside, it's, pretty typical Lexus with some Toyota sort of undertone there. Like all this elephant skin plastic. Seems like it's from Toyota. It extends to the doors as well, but it's kind of a softer material in some areas. You've got some leather or leatherette trim down below there as well. And then all down the lower edge, it's more of that elephant skin stuff, but it's not completely scratchy plastic. It's kind of a softer plastic, if that makes sense, just to help with the sound, acoustics and all that sort of thing. The engine doesn't sound beefy or notey really at all, even though it is a twin turbo. V6, in my opinion, they never really sound that good. The Alfa Romeo V6 obviously sounds pretty good, and the Ferrari V6. But in this, it kind of sounds like the old 2GR naturally aspirated V6 in some ways. It just doesn't have a kind of raspy roar up in the top end. This kind of just whooshes along. I'm not sure if you could hear that, but during the when I'm backing off, it kind of has this bassy pop to it, whereas the wastegates and turbos and whatever doing their thing. That's kind of nice, but you don't really hear that when you're cruising along. And up on the dash, we've got this massive touchscreen. It kind of is integrated into the dash, or at least the driver's section of the dash here, and it just drops off at the end. You have a bit of a pocket for the passenger to put their mobile phone or whatever. But there's not actually all that much storage around. dual cup holders and a wireless charging pad, decent sized center console box. But yeah, I think some of this area at the front here could be fixed up a little bit. It does have a 12-volt socket, but yeah, like what's all under there, you can close that. I don't know, it just seems like that area at the front could be better utilized. But speaking of areas to be utilized, this touchscreen, it's great with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but look at the blank space when you're just using the native Lexus system. Even when you go into different menus, it's all just on this side here, and some of them spread across there depending on what you're selecting, like that. But most of the time it's just this little row down the side. I do like having this quick jump to menu button here. Brings up all of your driver systems, so you can turn the lane keep assist off if you want to, very quickly, very easily. It does have a driver monitoring camera just at the front here, but I've found that after driving for almost 1,000 kilometers, it's pretty good. It doesn't actually intrude too much. It doesn't send off stupid warnings when it doesn't need to. If you're having a big conversation and you keep looking to the side, it will say, do you need a break? But there's no sort of buzzes and warnings and all that sort of thing. It just flashes up on the screen, and you can push the cancel button here to get rid of it. It's actually saying it's due for a service now, and you just hit the back button and it disappears. As you can see there, it's averaging 12.8 litres per 100 kilometres, which is not bad considering the official rating is 12.4, I think it is. It's thirsty. It's not a, you know, if you want absolute efficiency, I wouldn't buy something like this. Think of it almost like a V8. That's with plenty of highway driving as well. If you give it a fair bit, a lot of the time, it jumps up to about 13.2 or something like that. But it does go quite well, as you'll see later on in the 0 to 100 test. For a big beast like this, I think it goes quite well indeed. Lexus' attention to detail and quality is good. It does have a definite rugged appeal to it, but most of the materials, up on the dash are all quite nice and soft. It's got exposed stitching down the side, a nice steering wheel, nice size steering wheel as well. Leather for the gear lever boot, or leatherette. And then leather on the center console armrest there as well. But it doesn't really scream out that, you know, Lexus luxury appeal. I think partly on purpose, the GX is more of a rugged model, but in Australia, as I said, we haven't had GX before. So if you are a loyal Lexus buyer, you jump into this, you might think it's a bit more on the rugged style, which I think is on purpose. And then up at the back here, I've got good leg room, but my head is getting quite close to the ceiling, and I'm only short, 170 centimeters. So I think if you were pretty tall, you'd get quite close to that ceiling very easily. But legroom is totally fine. And you do have climate controls and other settings to play around with down there with the climate vents up in the ceiling. Now this seat is recline adjustable. You've got a few different settings. You can actually lie it right back if you want to for cruising comfort, but it does flip forward and up because this has a third row of seats. I'll jump in the back for you and show you the amount of room. Just quickly show you the boot. Bit of a problem there, the security blind. Once you pop up the third row, there's nowhere to store that. I've noticed that some vehicles from Hyundai, Kia, and even some of the newcomers from China have somewhere to store the security blind when you've got the third row flipped up. Now, obviously, if you're using this as a family 7-seater and you're always carrying 7 people or 6 people, you just keep the security blind at home. But if you're out and about and your kids want to bring home a friend or something like that, you want to quickly flip up one of the seats, then yeah, you're going to have to store that security blind somewhere. It does have electronic flip-up seats in the third row. And once we move that security blind out of the way, you've also got an Australian outlet power socket there, 220 volts, 100 watts, and some extra tie-down hooks and the cup holders for the third row. You do have USB-C charging port back there on both sides for the third row as well. Yeah, so I can't even... All right, you can stop beeping. You can't even flip up the seat and jam this in somewhere. It won't fit anywhere. Yeah, it might actually fit if you really jam it in and press these to the ends of them spring in, obviously. But yeah, that's getting a bit cumbersome, really. You're better off leaving that at home, but then you have to know that you're going to be using the third row. It is convenient having the power pop-up seat though. You can just hold the button down, you don't have to worry if you've got groceries or holding a kid or something like that. I'm in and it's not too bad. Like, there are definitely more spacious 7-seaters in on the market today. My knees are almost touching the seat there, but not quite. The floor is quite high though, that's the main thing, and it's lifting my feet up, which is lifting my knees up, which is usually the case for a 7-seater SUV, especially a rugged ladder frame style SUV, because the chassis just takes up room, and this has got a spare wheel under there as well. It's got no choice but to push the floor up of the cabin, leaving, not as much space. But it looks like the ceiling does rise up a bit. I mean, this does have the sunroof in the front there, but it does rise up a bit more so than even the second row, just slightly. But yeah, I could sit back here for maybe an hour trip or something like that, and I wouldn't be too bad. I wouldn't get too uncomfortable. The armrest on the side and the cup holders does help. It just makes it feel a bit more spacious. You do have these kind of divided seats as well, and it just helps improve the perception of space, I reckon, because you can just relax and you're not sitting squashed tight like this. You can sort of spread out a little bit, but the legroom is the main limiting factor. Leftover boot space is not class leading, like you don't have much depth as in reach, but it's pretty tall, I guess. I've tried to find the specs for this thing, but it seems like the internet has got all different figures. But what I found was 291 litres with the third row up, 1138 with the third row down, and then 2177 with both rear rows down. But I found also 1137 and 2178 as well, and I found an even lower figure for the third row with the third row up. So I don't know. The current Prado offers 104 litres with the third row up, 553 with the third row down, and 974 with the third and second row down, which doesn't make sense. So yeah, the old Prado offered 120 with the third row up, 620 with the third row down, and 1800 with both rear rows down. So I don't know. Aside from the numbers though, it does seem like a nice big boot. It's very square as well, so you can get big bulky items in nice and easy. But yeah, not much leftover space with the third row up. And then as for towing, it does have this big, bulky, chunky, ugly looking thing integrated into the bumper bar. And when you don't have the tow bar sticking out, it just, looks kind of awkward and out of place. But when you are towing, you've got 3.5 ton towing capacity, so that's at the sort of segment benchmark or standard. GCM, gross combination mass of 6,550 kilograms. It is a heavy vehicle though, 2,525 kilogram curb weight. So when you subtract the max towing and the curb weight from that GCM, you're left with 525 kilograms, which is, it's not that bad. Some SUVs out there in this specific class are much worse than that, as in they've got a very low leftover payload capacity. 520 is okay. It means you could fit sort of 5 passengers in there, or maybe 4 passengers with plenty of luggage or stuff in the trailer and be okay. But if you want to carry 7 passengers, that's going to be pushing it 525 kilograms, especially if you've got some luggage as well. All right, we'll go for a drive now. We'll take it on the winding road and see how it handles and how it goes, and then we'll do some light off-roading. I'm going to do some more extensive off-roading with the Prado very soon, and then we'll get stuck into the performance testing as well. This engine, it feels and sounds like a normal Toyota V6 engine, really, most of the time anyway. It's not until you put your foot down, which I'll do in a second, and we can keep an eye on the boost gauge there. It's in KPA, maxes out at 140 by the looks of it, but I don't know if it goes all the way that high. It's not until you put your foot down that you feel the extra torque, or the big boost of torque from the turbochargers. 650 Newton meters is a fairly high figure for a petrol engine. Some diesels get there, but yeah, petrols are usually about 600 or lower, 550 or something like that. 650 is a nice strong figure, and it helps push along this heavy weight. But in terms of the luxury cruising comfort, this is very smooth and quiet. The engine doesn't produce any weird or awkward clunks or rattles or anything like that. It's just very quiet and smooth. When you put your foot down, just turns into kind of like a whooshing roar, but even then it doesn't overtake the cabin ambience. You can easily maintain a conversation even at peak RPM. As for the handling, it's definitely a little bit heavy duty, and you know, you can feel that it's got rugged underpinnings. It does have a live axle, as I said, but it's quite nice. The ride is initially a bit bumpy and a bit rigid, as you'd expect with a heavy duty setup like this, but when you hit big bumps, it catches them and absorbs them really well. So on country roads and so on, if that's where you're spending most of the time, this is going to be very suitable. It's braced and solid. If you went for something even more comfortable, I think it would be too sloppy and it would, yeah, just float about a little bit and you'd lose some stability and confidence from behind the wheel. I think this is a good balance, considering it has serious off-road capability. If it didn't have off-road capability, then I would think this is a bit too rigid and then sloppy once you start to push it. There's a bit of body roll, but the front end does remain pretty flat. If you throw it in with a bit of urgency, a bit of suddenness, then it kind of just tips and sways to a certain point and then stays there. I think the tires, you know, they've got limitations as well, being all-terrain tread, but it's doing just fine. Like, I could take this on a nice big country road tour and not feel like I'm, you know, driving a truck. No way. Like, this feels very together and solid. If you were going to compare it to other Lexus models though, the RX, yeah, that does handle better and nicer in these kinds of scenarios. But again, considering this is a serious off-roader, I think it's doing quite nicely. That engine is very strong, yeah, like it's surprisingly quick. You wouldn't expect it from a big beast like this. It's hammering along just fine. And even though I am pushing it, it's still, the body and the brakes and the handling, it all seems to be quite well balanced for this style of vehicle. Just throw it into this one. There's no tyre squeal or anything like that. Yeah, it's quite nice. You do have a few different driving modes to choose from, including a sport mode, a normal mode and an eco mode. I haven't really felt much difference between those. I just leave it in normal and it seems to be fine. You can put it in comfort mode if you want to try and save a bit of fuel. But yeah, it does just fine in normal mode. It does have full-time four-wheel drive as well. So if you want to save fuel with a switchable all-wheel drive system, there are options out there. I'll show you the kickdown performance actually in sport mode. I'll pick it up to about 60 kilometers an hour, full throttle. 100 kilometers an hour. So yeah, it definitely picks up quite nicely indeed. The engine noise, there's a slight sort of vibration-y feel, or sound at least. It doesn't have that nice free revving nature of the 2GR engine, but yeah, there's no question about its performance. Overall, I really like this. I know it's not going to appeal to everyone, but I like that it's got something that a lot of SUVs don't have, character. Like, it feels rugged and enthusiastic about something. I like the low windowsill so you can see out easily. You sit pretty tall, big, tall, upright windows and cabin orientation. A lot of SUVs at the moment, they've got this sort of coupe profile to them. They just, I don't know, it's a bit confusing in my opinion, and it's just like driving a hatchback. Whereas this definitely feels like you're in a big, rugged off-roader. All right, speaking of which, let's hit the dirt now and see how it goes. I've come back from the Bathurst 12-hour and I'm in the middle of nowhere basically, some state forest, and there's like a maze of tracks. It looks pretty mild where I came in, but I just found this little track down here. It's got some humps and some puddles and so on, so we'll see how it goes. I expect it to be pretty good. The GX is based on the Prado, as I said, so it's got very, you know, heavy duty underpinnings. It's full-time four-wheel drive with low range. I've just got it in the normal mode at the moment, so four-wheel drive, but you can drive it on the road obviously. I think if you were planning to do a lot of off-roading, you'd get some higher profile tires, as these are too low profile for serious stuff. But if you're just, you know, going to do some camping trips and so on the dirt roads, then it's fine. So this sort of stuff, I think it's fine. But if you're doing some rock crawling and things like that, where you don't have much sidewall flex with tires like this, so they can't wrap around obstacles as well. I mean, you can still try it, and the drive line should be able to get you through with mechanical grip, but yeah, you'll probably find some limitations. Here's a kangaroo. So we've got pretty good approach and departure angles with this one. Let's see how the breakover angle is. Yep, that's fine, I didn't scrub. yeah, it's a serious off-roader. It's the first time Lexus has offered the GX in Australia, as I said, so that's awesome. I think the success of the Prado is probably, you know, a pretty big reason for that. The reason they brought it in, I mean. If the Prado goes well, then a luxurious version should go pretty good too, I guess. Yeah, that's a bit too overgrown down there. I don't want to put all scratches and pinstripes up the sides, so I'll have to turn around. I guess the good thing about this over the LX is that it is a little bit narrower, a little bit smaller, so you could take on slightly more technical tracks compared with those, you know, the big Land Cruiser based model. I think I'm gonna have to just reverse all the way. We'll go up here and go down some of these other little tracks and see what's going on. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be anything serious. But overall, I think this is a very capable off-roader because it is based on the Prado. I'd expect the same level of off-road performance as the Prado. Just the main limitation would be the tyres. You can feel it flexing and so on underneath, so it does have what it feels like. It's got good suspension range. And obviously with full-time four-wheel drive. Okay, we've got a bit of a climb here, might get some suspension flex happening. You can feel it underneath, it's all, you know, moving about, keeping the wheels on the ground as best as it can. It doesn't seem to have a rear diff lock, but you do have a center diff lock there, so you lock the front and rear axle, but you can still have wheel spin from separate wheels. But what I've done so far, there's been no traction issues whatsoever. Again though, it's not that serious. I mean, it's probably a little bit more serious than what it appears on camera. Like, this is a little bit steep, but it's quite, you know, it's very uneven ground. You wouldn't be able to get a little hatchback down here or anything like that. And it's doing just fine. This is the type of vehicle that I'd like to take on a big grand touring trip, because you have the luxury of Lexus, but you've still got the capability of something more heavy duty. Now, if you want something more luxurious, then yeah, the RX is definitely a better option. It's more comfortable, it's got a more dynamic suspension system, but it's not as capable off-road. I would certainly love a vehicle like this on a big grand touring trip up the you know, North Queensland or something like that, because you have the luxury when you're cruising along, but then you've still got the capability if you run into some more difficult stuff. This is getting a little bit overgrown again. I might have to turn around, but it does look a bit rugged down here. Again, I've just got it in the normal high range standard default modes. Yeah, it looks like I've got a bit of a climb over the other side there, so we'll see what's going on. I've got a bit of a mud bog hole here. I'm not completely confident in going through something like that when I'm by myself. They can be very deceiving, bog holes like this, because you don't know how deep they go, and they can be, you know, just lined with clay along the bottom, and it spins the wheels. I mean, I could probably go right over to the right hand side there and just dip my left hand in that last little bit of mud, and it should be fine. It's been quite dry here lately too. Yeah, definitely very slippery. I can feel the back end sliding all over the place. I think this would be a great option if you're doing a lot of grand touring, but you also want to, you know, get to the hard to reach places, because on the highway you've got the comfort and luxury of a Lexus, but then you've also got the heavy duty underpinnings to get you through those difficult places if you encounter them. But if you're looking to do proper serious off-roading all the time, like as a kind of weekend hobby, I would definitely change the wheels and tires to get something a bit more serious. Or yeah, maybe get the Prado, because you're not going to be scratching up a nice luxury Lexus. All right, let's head out now to the private road and do some performance testing and see what it goes like. Even though it is a little bit damp here on the road, I'll do the braking test in the dry, even if it's on a public road somewhere. I'll do the braking portion in the dry, whereas the performance test, the acceleration and the quarter mile and everything, I'll have to do here, but it's just a little bit damp. It's not that bad, it's actually got some dry patches, but it shouldn't affect this because it's four-wheel drive anyway.